evidence-based literacy.
Sorry.
The evidence-based literacy that we, EBLI, that I have used for over 20 years now. So when Haley, this is my daughter Haley, and this is who started the whole revolution in my life. When she was in second grade, she came home from school and she was crying, and she said, "Mom, all the kids at school are teasing me because I'm reading baby books." And Haley is our oldest, so she was our firstborn. And so we didn't have anything to compare it to. We had been reading to her since she was born every night, and we just thought we were on the right track. So I just told her, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. You just read whatever works for you. And then by the time third grade hit, her teachers contacted me in the fall and said, and I work in the same school district as Haley went to school. And so I know all the teachers. It's a small school district, and her third grade teacher was a personal friend of mine. And she said, "Hey, Wendy, I think Haley has a real problem. She's really not moving forward with her reading, and we see lots of issues." So I said, "Okay, what do we need to do? Let's get her tested. Let's look at some data." So we had our intermediate school district do testing, and they came up with all their testing and said that she was learning disabled in reading and that she would need supports, and she qualified for special ed, and they were just going to support her. And so, me being a teacher, but I was a middle school teacher, I was trained in secondary education, so I really I had a major in English, a minor in PE. I had taken some adolescent reading classes because I had a middle school endorsement at that time with an emphasis in reading, but I really didn't know how to teach reading. So I thought, well, more data is better. So my husband and I, we took Haley up to the Michigan Dyslexic Association, and we had her tested there because I thought more data would give me more information so that we could figure out where the gaps were, remediate those gaps, and move on. And do you want to talk about that, your experience?
Sure. Yeah, I can touch on that a little bit. I was in third grade, as my mom had mentioned, and we had went to this dyslexic association to get tested. And I remember, many adults doing lots of tests on me. And I kind of, at that point, I kind of knew, what they kind of wanted from the test. And so we went on, and it was a few hours of testing and different things, and making sure that, I was, that my reaction time, they would ask me, how many animals can you name in a minute? And, can I kick a soccer ball and things like that? Just a very all encompassing, I would say, testing. And at the end, they pulled me into this room, and it was this adult that had been with me for a majority of the testing. And she had pulled out a burlap cloth, and there was, it was from a drawer. And so there was multiple in there. And she had sat me down and she said, "Haley, here, this is the burlap cloth." And she had removed some of the strings. Burlap is very thick, very dense. She removed some of the strings, and she said, "Haley, there's something missing. You have something missing in your brain. And that means that you are, you're dyslexic. You have missing things in your brain." So, as a third grader looking up to this adult, I'm like, wide-eyed, okay, I lots to take in, but I'm dumb. Okay, thank you for telling me that. And so that, without getting into it in too much detail, led to, my self-esteem obviously dropping when an adult says that there's something wrong with you. And no blame to this person, but that was just the education that they had received, and that was what they knew at the time. But it was unfortunately, it had lasting impacts on me. You know, to just, it just, you know, it's still, I still think back to that, and I wonder how many other children were impacted. So that was my take on the testing.
So we, from that point, we had Haley in special education where she was getting extra reading supports. The school had requested that she do summer school to help her catch up. So we did summer school. We also, so that was, I didn't see much improvement with that. So then we also started tutoring with an Orton Gillingham trained tutor. And we kind of continued that regiment partially through third grade and then into fourth grade. The spring of fourth grade, I was pretty excited to go to parent-teacher conferences in the spring, because I thought, well, we're gonna see some really great improvements. Haley's been working really hard. We've had people working with her, you know, these tutors, and it's just going to be awesome. And so I sat down, my husband and I sat down, and the teacher proceeded to tell us that Haley was reading at, maybe by this point, she was like at second grade, halfway through second grade, maybe a third grade reading level, but that she would never get past a fourth grade reading level. That was quite sobering. And it took a lot for me not to just break down and cry, because I expected there to be some growth. And so I went home that night and I felt pretty really sad and depressed about the lost opportunities for my daughter, that if she could only read at a fourth grade level, that was going to make her life very challenging. And that, you know, maybe there's going to be some opportunities that aren't going to be available for her with a fourth grade reading level. So I kind of just mulled around with that. She started fifth grade. Well, before she started fifth grade in that summer, I went ahead and went through the Michigan, I think it was called the Michigan School for the Blind. I was able to get all of her textbooks put on audio. I was able to get any, you know, novels that they were reading in school, you know, recorded, so that I could help support her in the best way possible. And so fifth grade came and went. Haley's self-esteem really was plummeting, and she had gone from this vibrant, fun-loving child to very unsure of herself, insecure, and on numerous occasions saying she was dumb and stupid and etc. So then I, as a sixth grade teacher, I was thinking all this time, and I was looking for new programs and different systems or different things, different ways to teach reading. And most of the stuff I came across looked pretty much the same as what Haley was already getting. And so I just started thinking, and then one day it kind of dawned on me, when I was thinking about all the students that enter my sixth grade classroom, like 40% of them who were, you know, 1 to 2 grades behind on reading, and consistently over the years. And I didn't have any skills that I had acquired. I'd gone to every kind of training I get my hands on, to change that. And I had an epiphany that just came to me, that, you know what, these kids' brains are not wired differently. It is the system that is broken. It is how we are teaching reading. Now, I did not know any other ways to teach reading, but you know, Haley was part of that whole word era, you know, learning by whole words. And I didn't know that I thought they were teaching her some phonics, and that really wasn't happening. So I ended up running into a friend, And she said, hey, I've got these new strategies, they're amazing. And she was a retired special ed teacher that I knew. And she goes, here's my brochure. I'm doing tutoring. I just put it in my bag. I thought, okay, because I still wasn't thinking that I had any options. And then one day I found that brochure, and it was the summer before Haley was starting 6th grade. And I knew what the curriculum in 6th grade was going to look like because I taught it. And I thought, holy moly, she's not going to, this is going to be a real struggle. So I had her start tutoring Haley, and very begrudgingly, Haley was not up for it, because for her, it was just another confirmation, all the tutors that had tried so hard and all the people that had put in time and energy with her. And it just kind of validated that she was broken, that she was dumb, that, her brain was missing something. So we started tutoring with evidence-based literacy instruction, EBLI. And I sat there, and the first session I went, this is different. I like the way this comes together. This is pretty amazing how fast and furious and the information that she was giving to Haley. And within, so that was like in June, and we took some summer vacations, but basically within about 18 to 20 hours of tutoring, Haley walked in my classroom in September, and she said, hey, Mom, I went to the library, I'm reading my first book. She goes, it's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And from that moment on, she never looked back. It was just all gung-ho, and she was like a sponge. She just wanted to go to bookstores and buy books, and she loved history, and she was reading history books, and she was reading fantasy, which is really tough. And we pretty much ditched the label of learning disabled. We ditched the label of dyslexic. Because of some of the emotional trauma that she experienced, we still needed to have a 504 plan for some extended time, because any tests would lead to great anxiety. Mm-hmm. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of give my perspective on starting EBLI. I remember the exact moment my mom met with this teacher friend of hers. I thought she was crazy. She was full of energy and just excited. And I'm like, oh, this crazy lady is going to try and teach me to read. We're not going to do this. And because, how many programs have we tried and failed, and it was just boring and dry and all of this stuff. And so we got into it, and it was fun, and it was exciting, and it was like fast paced in the way that it wasn't overwhelming, but it was like, okay, I get this. My brain's clicking, my brain's turning. I'm understanding this. I was able to absorb and to understand it so quickly, and it just made sense. My brain worked it out to where it made total sense to me, and it was easy. And then it became so easy that I had such huge advancements within, like my mom said, within hours. It was, something that we'd never seen before. And it was, looking back like, oh, wow, okay, I can do this. Like, I'm not dumb. Like, I can figure this out. This is what people mean by reading. Like, this is awesome. And so I started reading more. I dove into books. Books are just a whole world for us that we just open up, and it's just so fascinating. And so to, have that opportunity, it's just amazing with these just simple tools that make sense. The segmenting and blending, the recognizing that, the letter A can have 7 different sounds, up to
more
combinations. And learning those combinations, people are very smart. Our brains are very smart. They're wired to figure things out. And this program, EBLI, it totally caters to that. And it's amazing. It's totally amazing. And I think every single person should have the opportunity to experience EBLI. It's truly a human right to be able to read and to be proficient at reading. And this should not be something that we hide the data from, or that we are scared of the data, or we're scared of change. We need to, I wholeheartedly continue on a program similar to the EBLI programs and strategies for reading. So that's my little take on it. Sorry, a little bit long, but
yeah. So yeah, after that date, I was amazed. I went, after Haley left my classroom, I just sat down and cried. Of course, it was such an emotional experience. And when we went home and she read to my husband and he started crying, and every night she's in her bedroom reading, we'd have to tell her, put the book down, go to bed. And every night my husband and I would get teary-eyed. It was very emotional to see this transformation. And so I just knew that I could not let this information not be given to other children and other people. So I didn't have the money. I mean, I'm a teacher, right? I didn't have the extra money to really, get paid for the EBLI training, but I did have a credit card. So I never told my husband, but I just put it on the credit card. And that was the beginning of me working with students and just moving tons and tons of students, just getting my hands on them. I started integrating in my 6th grade classroom. I got other English teachers involved. And, within 4 years, I just had so much success, and so many parents were just ecstatic, and kids, and that I did write a book entitled From Learning Disabled to Enabled. And it doesn't tell you how to fix reading, because that is Nora Shabazi and EBLI's proprietary, that's their stuff. But I did explain how it works. And then most importantly, I just told stories of students, of children that I had in class, that their parents told me about how it changed their lives. And I wrote the book to give hope to parents and educators, to have them keep searching and know that there are better, more efficient and effective ways to teach reading.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
We have a couple questions here.
Okay, perfect.
All right. From Julie, I have a question, but I don't know if it will make sense. I think this is to you, Haley. How did you realize that you could read after all the years of other tutoring? When you started EBLI, how did you realize that you had crossed over from not reading to being able to decode the words on the page?
I went from, my mom says baby books, which was pretty accurate. Just struggling to read even like a full sentence or a paragraph. And, a page was just an enormous task for me. It would take me forever. I'd have to reread it. I didn't understand it. There was huge sections of it that I was missing. Just not reading really. Was doing these strategies. And then I'm The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the Chronicles of Narnia, one of my favorite first series. Picking it up for the first time and attempting to read it, and then understanding that I can read it and I understand it, and that this is like a magical thing happening both in my head, just amazing. It's so empowering to be able to go from, well, I'm never going to be able to do that, to, wow, this is incredible. This is what it's like. I can read this. I can turn the page on my own. I don't need help. I'm golden.
Wow. Okay. Another question. Can you say more about how the process that you learned for reading with EBLI differed from the way you had been taught to approach reading a book with OG?
Hey, that's probably to Haley.
Well,
Is that?
I would think so.
I think that's you.
Okay.
Do you remember?
Yeah, it is hard to think back, just because it's such second nature for me at this point, of how I, how I still continue to read. But my mom kind of touched on it. The keys to the EBLI strategy are like phonetic awareness and breaking up the word into into sounds, making sure that you have all of the sounds in the word, and then segmenting them, putting them together, blending them, and then reading it as a whole. And so you can break down huge words as and read them once you are able to identify each segment and then put them together, and then it reads the word, as opposed to a lot of memorization, a lot of, oh, well, the first one does the, however that saying is, the first one does the walking, the second one does the, all these rules that we have that nobody even remembers. That's really hard for a child to remember. It just doesn't work with our brains. It's so much easier to give them the information that actually is our language of, well, these are, these different sounds. This is, A makes these different sounds, and AE can make these different sounds. And in this situation, it makes this different sound. My mom can touch more on the science part of it, but that, for me, that was the difference in making sense of that in an easy and fun and fast-paced way.
Right. Any other questions from the audience? Let's see here. I have one. Can you tell me did the spelling follow your ability to spell, or was that always lacking, or does it continue to lack? What's that like?
The spelling continued just like the reading did, because when you segment and blend and you make sure that you have all of those different sounds in the word that you are spelling or reading, and you can identify the different sounds, the representations of that, the symbol representations, your spelling is right there. It's hand in hand. And yes, way better speller.
I think that some of the arguments against a speech to print sprint, and I haven't been drinking, speech to print approach. Maybe I need to, is that some of the methods that are used is that, it's very one at a time, but then EBLI is, you learn all the ways to make the E sound, or all the ways to make the A sound. And that's some of the negative comments about that. What do you think about that?
Well, they want your opinion. Do you want it or don't you know? Do you have an opinion? Was it too much for your brain?
No,
Yeah.
my brain picked it up very easily. The system is made in a way that it's easy to pick up, it's easy to comprehend, and you are given all these different tools, and you learn how EBLI is set up, is that you learn the most common ways, spellings, sounds of different symbols, like the letter A, the most common sounds of the letter A, you'll learn that first, and then you'll go to the more complex that you don't see as many times. So your brain is very quick at picking up, okay, this is the most common sound for A. Is it this? Nope, it's not that. Okay, this is the second most common. Is it this? Nope, that doesn't make sense either. Okay, go to the, and so it's within an instant, your brain can do that. And that's what really is just so awesome about the program, that you are able to learn and identify all of the different sounds of the letters, or the symbols, what you call them, the symbols, and to just in an instant figure it out and what makes sense,
Okay, do we have any others here? Here's one from Lindsay. Any tips for Wendy? Any tips on how to win over educators to this approach? We're all in your circle receptive, or did you encounter skepticism and resistance? Hey.
Yes, so the people that I worked with, my middle school cohort, they were open to, it was easier for them to learn the strategies because they're secondary education trained, and they didn't have as much training in reading and things to undo. So I would say absolutely it's easier for middle school, high school, secondary ed teachers to be trained. I did encounter a lot of pushback, and most of it, and I never realized this because I didn't have elementary ed training. But the last 7 years of my career, I spent in an elementary school. So that was a very enlightening experience. And with all the new research out, and now that I'm retired, I read a lot of research on reading and literacy. And I never realized, I know it was hard for me to shift with some of the language and some of the strategies. Like one of the biggest things that was hard was letters don't talk to us. Okay. This is just a symbol for this sound in our alphabet, in our phonemic, way that we teach. We have a phonemic alphabet, and that was hard because forever and ever, everybody's always said, this letter says, so some of those shifts, but I never realized how hard it would be for elementary teachers because they have had so much training and tradition and just everything that's around them saying this is the way you teach. You have to say the letter names, and you start with the letter names, and you do one letter per week or whatever. And so I was able to get into some classrooms in my lower elementary and just model. I did a lot of modeling. And that was very intriguing for teachers. I worked with some of their toughest students. I said, give me your toughest student. And I worked with them for a few hours, and the teachers noticed huge gains in their ability to read. As far, I had some very angry moments just because people weren't open to learning, but that was because there was a lack of communication and a lack of understanding. Like, I didn't understand what elementary teachers had been trained in. And a lot of them would look at me and go, well, you're just a secondary ed teacher. What do you know about reading? And, and so that was, it's been tough at times. And one of the things that I've shifted to is saying, can you show me the data, the scientific data by neuroscientists and cognitive scientists that support this practice? And I've just turned it back on them. And I've just asked people, and before I learned EBLI, I had asked reading specialists in our school district, and I'd said, hey, so I have all these kids coming in my classroom. What do you suggest I do? And they said, oh, do this, this, and this. And I said, okay, well, isn't that what you're doing right now in the elementary school? Yeah, that's what we're doing. And I go, well, it didn't work for the last 3 or 4 years. So why is it going to work now? And I wasn't being smart. I wasn't being a jerk. I didn't mean to, but I was thinking those things, and I am a questioner by just nature. I guess good, bad, kind of ticked a lot of people off because I would start asking these probing questions and people didn't have answers. So I would say get some open-minded people and have them try. And, really, because people you work with, people that are on your team, if they trust each other, it's better for those people to kind of help make the shift.
What about people that are saying this can't be true, this has got to be snake oil, and what do you think about that? How do you react to that?
Yeah, I know, because I started using this 20 years ago, before all of this research was even available.
Right.
And there were a lot of people that said some very nasty, snide things to me. And I just, sometimes I would work with all these students and I'd say, okay, to some of our elementary reading specialists, I said, you come over. You were the one that gave them the tests in 5th grade before they entered my 6th grade classroom in middle school. You come over and test them with F&P and all those other lovelies. And I said, you test them. I don't care. Test them. See what you get. And the kids did phenomenal. And they had moved like 2 and 3 years.
Mhm.
Some of them more than that. And basically that data was just swept under the rug and nobody says anything.
Yeah. Well, change is hard. We know
Yeah,
that.
it's hard. It's hard. I'll tell you what was really hard as an educator. Nobody goes into education to hurt children. Everybody's doing the absolute best they know, everybody. And teachers work so hard, so many extra hours, putting their blood, sweat, and tears. And so when I found these different strategies that were so amazing, that could move kids fast and furious in hours, I just wanted to call up all those other students I had and say, okay, now I know.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. It's hard, and you have to give yourself a break and you have to say, I didn't know. It's okay. I don't have to beat myself up. I didn't know. I just have to, now that I know, I just have to start from here and move forward. And I would say that I've done everything in my power to move forward and to help students and other teachers and administrators. I've had a lot of people in my classroom watching what I do, a lot. And I just open up my classroom and say, come on in, watch what we do, ask questions.
I think it goes back to the new adage that we talk about is, when you know better, you do better. And
Yeah.
I think that's what we have to just keep in mind, that not everyone's going to embrace it. And, we just have to do what's best for kids.
Yes.
And do the best we can with what we know. I mean, that's what I
Yes.
always say. So any other questions? Okay, here's one last one. From a learning perspective, are you able to describe what are the biggest differences between OG and speech to print?
From what I know about Orton Gillingham, I was never trained in it, is that Orton Gillingham spends a lot of time on more of the rules. And with evidence-based literacy, we don't have to teach the rules, because through the strategies and through self-discovery, when you guide the students, they start picking up on those patterns, those rules, those patterns. And we don't have rules because they don't work in a lot of situations. I know I always got frustrated with long vowel, short vowel. I'm like, well, what about all the other vowel sounds there are? What do we call those? Do we name those? And kids are okay with it. Kids don't get really yanked up about it as much as the adults. I started this summer with my granddaughter, Haley's daughter. She was 4 at the time. She's now 5. Teaching her with speech to print, how to read. And she was pretty much a blank slate. And she was reading. We'd work a half an hour at a time, twice a week. And, she was reading phonic books, in a few hours. I mean, it took several hours, and I was really nervous about that, because that's not my wheelhouse, little people. I mean, I've worked with 2nd graders and 1st graders, but not somebody who's a blank slate and doesn't really know letter formation. And we had a great time, and we worked with segmenting and blending first, just playing around, so that the kids know that, dragon, the sounds. And we would just play with everything around the house, and she went from there. And then I showed her, here's what represents this sound, after she could do that. So that's the biggest thing, explicit instruction, and having, with EBLI, Nora, the creator, has given us weighted lists. So the most common sound or spelling for that sound has more words in it to the least common. And so students give them that information and they're able to look at it. I say, oh, what do you notice? What kind of patterns do you see here? And they're like, oh, and then we get right into text. And another thing is with evidence-based literacy, I didn't do leveled books. I didn't do, and I just put them in text. And I think that's one of my sixth graders, they went into sixth grade text and some of it was really clunky for a while, but I couldn't keep them in anything lower. They had to move. We had to move. And we had to get that vocabulary in. We had to get that, how to read it, but also the vocabulary. And I know it sounds, for people who haven't tried it or haven't seen it, I know it sounds too good to be true, but I've done it for 20 years. In a rural area with a high poverty, all of that. And we've seen huge success. We've exited a lot of kids out of special education.
I like the idea of using authentic text early on.
Yes.
Because kids bring language to the table, and that's what, those are the words they speak out of their mouth. It shouldn't be contrived, as in decodable text. I mean, I'm not saying we don't use decodable text, but I just think many approaches hang on to that decodable text for so long instead of making that transition to real text,
right,
with real language in it,
Yes.
So
yeah, I think that's a big shift. I know that's a big shift from a lot of elementary training. Is a lot of the people that were reading specialists, they're like, what, you're putting them in sixth grade text? And I said, yeah, this is what we live in. This is what we need.
right, that's
so
what you have to use. Right.
This is it. This is what we're doing. Plus I had no resources or anything else, so
might as well use what you got, right? All right, ladies, anything else you want to add?
Well, I do want to add one thing.
Okay.
So when I'm in different classrooms, I'm still, and talking to people and seeing things, I still see a lot of people hanging on to teaching the sight words, the fry words, the heart words, whatever you want to name them. Okay. I see them teaching those as whole words still. And so I think that there's some maybe misinterpretation of some of the research and data. So when I think about when I just started learning about Scarborough's rope in the last year and a half, 2 years or whatever, 3 years. And when I see that last strand that says sight recognition or something like that, I think that people take it, oh, okay, we need to teach these sight words and they just need to memorize them. But the problem with that is that's happening in the early elementary, kindergarten, first grade. And the students pick it up that, oh, this is how we learn how to read. We memorize words. And then we run into problems because they aren't getting enough practice with the phonemic awareness, the segmenting and blending, the code. And I think a lot of the data that teachers are getting back in lower L says, hey, my kid's on track because they're memorizing all these words. The teachers don't say they're memorizing these words, but I'm saying they memorize words so they can get pretty far. But then we have so many students stuck at the fourth grade reading level because they have no strategies to break up multisyllable words, and they have no knowledge or very limited knowledge of the code of the English language. So they can't spell and they can't read it. And so this is just my little doodah here. Okay. So can you see that? Okay. So like the word your, it's kind of a sight word or whatever. We need to know that OU is O, like in mourn and born and boulder, not born, sorry, boulder. And then in the word there, we need that. We need to know that this is going to be a spelling for A. It's funky, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, but it's in a lot of these one syllable words. And there's there, and there's error, we need it there. And terrible, we need it there too. The kids need to know that. That's part of the code.
Right.
In the word said, AI, it's usually A, but it's A here in said. Well, it's also E in mountain and porcelain, okay? And then R. Here's a pattern for you. The letter A is going to represent when it's followed by an R. That's a pattern that's consistent. It's in car, it's in mark, it's in embark. So when we teach whole words, those sight words, we take away the opportunity for our kids to learn some of that advanced code that they can apply in all sorts of reading settings. And it doesn't help them to be better readers in the long run. So if anything else, I mean, if people can that's a huge shift. If you can make the shift to not teach those as whole words, it would be powerful. It would be very powerful.
Getting the message out is the problem.
I know.
We keep
I know.
trying.
I know.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies, for your wisdom, your courage, and all that you do for
Thank
this.
you for having us.
You're
Thank you.
welcome for this mission. Next month, I believe we're having Nancy Dressel and her daughter, I believe, is going to be on too. So that'll be fun. All right, folks, have a great evening.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody. Good luck.
Thank you for your
Stay
time.
strong.